I nonchalantly place the cup of milk that Sarah personally poured for me on the corner of the table. A half circle of white powder remains on the rim, the residue after the tranquilizer had dissolved. Sarah stands by the kitchen doorway, arms folded across her chest, eyes fixed on my hands. Her nails bite into the flesh, and a highly unnatural smile twists across her face, her voice sharp as if scraping on sandpaper. Clara, listen to Mom and drink the milk. Tomorrow is the top-tier academic aptitude assessment exam, and you've been sleep-deprived recently. Drinking this will help you sleep well. I look up at her and don't argue. I simply pick up the form on the table. This is a certificate of severe mental disorder and insomnia issued by a private clinic. According to regulations, as long as the applicant's family member and the applicant sign and submit this certificate, the assessment committee will immediately revoke the examinee's lifelong qualification and the system will automatically defer the recommended quota to the second in line, the son of Sarah and her ex-husband, my stepson Ethan. Dr. Vance from the clinic has already signed below. Seeing me take the form, Sarah steps forward 2 paces, forcefully shoving a black signing pen into my hand, fingertips trembling slightly. As long as you sign, Mom promises you won't worry about clothes or meals for the rest of your life. Ethan will obtain the qualification and will naturally inherit the family fund, and he won't forget to treat you well then. I take the pen, my fingertips hovering above the signature line. Dr. Vance said my mental state is very unstable, right? I turn my head, meeting Sarah's eyes. Yes. You've been under a lot of mental stress recently and are not fit for such a high-intensity exam. Sarah parrots, her eyes flashing with concealed excitement and greed. I take up my phone from my pocket and press the playback button in front of her. The recording immediately fills the room with a crystal-clear conversation that was the recording from yesterday afternoon in Dr. Vance's private office. As long as you transfer $50,000 cash into your account, this forged psychiatric certificate will take effect immediately. Right, Dr. Vance? Sarah's voice rings clearly through the room. Of course, madam. As long as Clara signs above, the legal effect is fully established. No one will be able to expose any issues. Dr. Vance's voice follows smoothly as he accepts the check. Sarah's smile instantly freezes. Her eyes narrow sharply, facial muscles twitching as if air has been sucked out of her, and she can't utter a sound. You dare to record? Sarah lunges forward, trying to grab the phone. I move swiftly to the side, reaching out to hold the document on the table, but at an angle she can't see. I had already swapped that forged psychiatric certificate for another identical-looking document that I had earlier drafted with a lawyer, the Sarah Personal Real Estate and Stock Full Mortgage Undertaking. The covers and layout of the 2 documents are exactly the same, only the bottom details on the first page are entirely different. Sarah's emotions finally spiral out of control. She doesn't care about the phone any longer, grabbing the document from my hand, pressing it down on the table, and wildly shouting, "Sign it! If you don't sign today, you'll sign it anyway. This family does not belong to you to control." She grabs my right hand and presses it down hard onto the signature page of the mortgage undertaking. I have no rebuttal, not even the slightest resistance. I follow her force, letting her guide my hand as, at the end of this mortgage undertaking, I seal her long-carried law seal that she uses to control the funds in my family trust, and sign my own name. Sarah exhaled deeply as she saw the signature boldly appear on the paper. She laughed maniacally, her eyes reddened with fierce blood vessels. "Clara, you can't beat me. Ethan's the one who gets the slot. You'll never set foot in that exam hall in this lifetime." She hurriedly stuffed the document into her briefcase, not even checking the exact terms, grabbed the bag, and rushed out of the room, preparing to deliver the documents to the committee overnight. What she didn't know was that the moment she slammed the door, I picked up the glass of milk that contained a sedative on the table. I walked to a blind corner in the hallway, poured the milk back into Sarah's favorite thermos without a drop spilled. Then I took out another spare phone and sent a text to Dr. Vance. "The diagnosis fee has been transferred to the overseas account under your name by the third party. Please confirm receipt within half an hour. Also, Mrs. Sarah urgently requests a change in the diagnostic conclusion. Please immediately send the backup original to the designated email." 5 minutes later, my inbox received the original diagnosis file with his electronic signature from Dr. Vance. along with a copy of the bank transfer receipt confirming the receipt of the $50,000 bribe. I uploaded this receipt, the audio recording, and the replaced mortgage pledge electronic stub encrypted to the cloud server of the third-party notary office. Outside the room, the roar of Sarah starting the car engine faded into the distance. I sat at the desk, calmly opened the computer, and loaded the final confirmation page for tomorrow's exam. On the page, my eligibility to take the exam still showed. Approved. Status normal. I took out 2 identical files from the drawer, organized the page numbers, and lightly stacked them on the marble coffee table in the living room. The lock clicked. Sarah stepped in, her face showing unmistakable pride and arrogance. Behind her, my half-brother Ethan walked in wearing a tailored suit, head held high, his eyes full of contempt and disdain for me. "Clara, don't think you'll still be able to enter the exam room tomorrow." Sarah stepped forward and slammed a prepared legal document onto the coffee table with a dull thud. "This is the family property waiver agreement. As long as you sign it and promise to relinquish all shares your father left in this house, I'll allow you to keep the most basic social welfare. Otherwise, I guarantee you won't even get tomorrow's admission ticket." Ethan sat on the sofa opposite, his long legs crossed, picked up his teacup, took a sip, and laughed sardonically. "Little sister, listen to Mom. With your qualifications, you'd just waste a seat even if you went. If you sign quietly, and after I inherit the company through assessment, I'll give you $2,000 a month in living expenses. Far better than you living on the streets." I didn't say anything, only quietly reached out and pulled the agreement toward myself. Sarah had already arranged for the family's exclusive lawyer, Mr. Harrison. At this moment, Mr. Harrison, dressed in a neat suit and carrying a briefcase, walked in from outside, standing stiffly to one side with a stern expression. "Miss Clara." Mr. Harrison produced the notary seal, his voice cold and merciless. "As the witness lawyer for this case, I need to confirm that you are signing this agreement entirely of your own free will. Please sign in the designated area and place your fingerprint." Sarah stared at me viciously, hands clutched together, breathing increasingly rapid. Ethan looked completely relaxed as he pulled out his phone and played a game as if no one else existed. I looked up, my gaze as calm as a stagnant pool. I reached for the black pen and slowly signed my name, Clara, at the end of the agreement. In an instant, a greedy light flashed in Sarah's eyes. She eagerly reached out to snatch the agreement away, but I didn't stop my movements. I casually flipped to the last page of the agreement and pulled out the duplicate copy behind the bottom page, together with its attachments. Before they came in, I had already placed the pre-prepared supplemental clause on gratuitous asset gift and waiver of equity under this agreement. The transfer paper would perfectly replicate onto the supplemental clause's transferor and transferee sections for every stroke I had just signed, and for the family seal that Sarah had previously affixed to the main agreement. But in the supplemental clause's text, the transferee was Clara, while the person voluntarily relinquishing all company shares, real estate earnings, and trust inheritance rights was clearly written as Ethan. "What are you doing?" Sarah realized something was wrong and angrily demanded, reaching out to grab the stack of papers. I quickly pressed the Bluetooth key under the coffee table. The living room's large-screen television suddenly lit up, and the high-definition camera captured the entire signing and replication process, flawlessly live-streaming and recording every detail. Mr. Harrison's face changed color. As a professional lawyer, he immediately saw the legal effect of the replicated document. "Mr. Harrison," I raised my head, my voice steadier than ever. "According to Article 38 of our city's civil and commercial law, under the supervision of the witnessing attorney, with the parties personally signing and affixing valid stamps, the supplemental agreement has the same ultimate legal effect as the main agreement. All preceding actions have been recorded by audio and video and have been uploaded in real time to the Judicial Forensic Center." Ethan suddenly stood up from the sofa, his phone smashing to the ground and breaking into pieces. He pointed at my nose, furious, and shouted, "You dare to trap us? You're asking for death." He lunged viciously, trying to seize the documents. I didn't even blink an eye. I calmly picked up the pepper spray on the table and sprayed precisely at Ethan's eyes. "Ah!" Ethan let out a piercing scream, covering his eyes with both hands, toppled to the floor, writhed violently, and wailed. Sarah completely panicked. She screamed and pounced toward Ethan, then turned her head, her eyes red with anger as she cursed at me. You crazy person. What did you do to him? How dare you scheme against your own brother? I stepped over Ethan, who was rolling around on the ground, and approached Mr. Harrison, handing him the duplicate legal notarization certificate bearing both signatures and seals. Mr. Harrison, please keep your witnessed copy. I looked at him calmly. If you attempt to destroy or deny this document now, 5 minutes later the Discipline Inspection Committee will receive a report accusing you of assisting others in coercing someone into signing an unequal agreement. A sheen of cold sweat broke out across Mr. Harrison's brow. He trembled as he took the document, not daring to look at Sarah, grabbed his briefcase, and fled out the door without turning back. Sarah collapsed onto the floor, cradling Ethan as he continued to wail, her eyes fixed on the agreement in my hand, trembling with rage all over her body. I ripped up the original property forfeit agreement in front of her, scattering the pieces over Ethan, then picked up my own revised effective clause and turned to go upstairs. I walked down the stairs, and the living room was already filled with the elders and relatives of the family. Sarah wore a gorgeous evening gown, gathered around several uncles and cousins, her face showing an unconcealed pride and vanity. Next to her, Ethan had on a well-tailored custom suit, his face smeared with thick concealer to hide the red eyes from yesterday's spray. He held a wine glass, basking in everyone's compliments. Dear friends and family. Sarah raised her glass high, cleared her throat, and her voice rang loudly through the hall. Tomorrow is the examination for top-tier academic qualifications. Our Ethan, after years of hard work, has been recognized by several authorities as the strongest contender for this round of qualifications. This pre-exam celebratory banquet is to wish Ethan success in one fell swoop. A chorus of compliments and applause rose around them. Sarah turned her head and saw me standing in the corner. A small smile curved at the corners of her mouth, followed by a cold sneer, and she spoke loudly. As for Clara, well, this child's qualifications are mediocre, and her recent mental state isn't great either. But as her sister, she has specially taken out her own savings to host this banquet for her brother. So everyone, give her a round of applause as well. Relatives shot sympathetic yet disdainful glances at me, whispering one after another, turns out she's just a stepping stone. No wonder her mind is in trouble. She really pales in comparison to Ethan. I showed no expression on my face, and even smiled at everyone and nodded. I walked to the central gift display table in the banquet hall. Here lay various pre-exam blessing gifts from friends and relatives for Ethan. I raised my hand in greeting and summoned the professional foreign bartender I had hired in advance at a high salary. Ladies and gentlemen, I took the microphone, the sound clearly transmitted through the speakers, to express my blessings to my elder brother Ethan. I have specially invited a professional etiquette team to display Ethan's usual favorite lucky mascot for everyone, hoping to bring him good luck for the exam. Ethan frowned, a trace of doubt flashing in his eyes, but faced with the faces of so many elders at the scene, he could only force a smile and stand at the podium, joking. My sister is too polite. It's just some personal items. I didn't pay him any attention and signaled the bartender to open the exquisite gift box placed in the center of the display. The bartender, wearing white gloves, respectfully removed the items from the gift box one by one, laid them out on the high-gloss display pad, and simultaneously broadcast a high-definition live stream on the big screen. The first item to be taken out caused the room's murmurs to abruptly cease. That was not a mascot, but a micro-high-tech invisible earphone, the size of a mung bean, with an extremely rare bone conduction receiving chip and nanometer scale signal amplifier beside it. This is. A cousin who works in the education department stepped forward 2 steps, his face instantly turning ugly. This is a national-level banned high-tech cheating device. It even has military-grade anti-interference frequencies. Ethan's face instantly turned as pale as paper, and large beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He hurried forward to grab it. What are you doing? Turn it off. This isn't mine. I instinctively stepped to the side to block him, smiling at the bartender and saying, "Continue. Take out the lucky charm at the bottom and show everyone too." The bartender skillfully peeled away the inner layer of the gift box and took out a sheet of paper printed with an encrypted QR code, as well as a foreign language contract. The high-definition camera on the large screen aimed precisely at the heading and the signature of the contract. It was a real-time exam answer transmission service agreement signed with an overseas illicit technical team. The payee's account clearly bore Ethan's full English name, and the signature on the guarantee was Sarah's own handwriting. The entire banquet hall fell silent in an instant, then erupted into thunderous noise and commotion. Oh my God! Is this a cheating agreement? Ethan actually bribed an overseas team to cheat in tomorrow's top-tier exam? If this is exposed, the entire family's reputation will be completely ruined. Sarah screamed, dashing onto the stage like crazy, grabbing at the power cord of the big screen, her voice piercing and almost deformed. Fake! This is slander. Clara forged it to frame her brother. I stood calmly to the side, watching the enraged Sarah and Ethan, who was trembling and crouched on the floor. Mrs. Sarah. I pulled out another stamped document from my pocket and held it up in front of all the relatives. The funds to purchase this cheating device were precisely transferred from the family fund account you mortgaged without authorization yesterday, amounting to $500,000 in cash. The transaction records and the overseas IP addresses are all clearly verifiable. The old patriarch struck the floor with his cane, shouting in anger, "Bastards! This is nothing less than a shame to our family." The relatives' eyes for Sarah and Ethan changed from the previously flattering gaze to disgust and contempt, and they all withdrew a step or two. Ethan lay lifeless on the floor with his eyes unfocused, his lips trembling, unable to utter a complete sentence. Sarah, like a madwoman, cursed on the stage with a distorted, feral face and even tried to strike someone. I coldly watched the scene, then turned and headed for the door. The din in the banquet hall still echoed behind me as I walked out the door and sat straight into a black sedan parked by the curb. I pulled out my phone and opened the live streams of several mainstream gossip media outlets and educational exposé bloggers in this region. At this moment, the homepage was prominently featuring a hot search preview, aristocratic scandal. A top-tier academic qualification candidate suspected of major cheating before the exam? This was Sarah's plan from half an hour ago, to prevent me from flipping the script at last night's mortgage agreement and today's congratulatory banquet. She had already invested heavily in several gossip media outlets, planning to expose my supposed mental abnormality and cheating history tonight, attempting to pin the charge of unqualified for the exam on me once and for all. However, what she didn't know was that the reporters who received the tip-off were not waiting at my doorstep. 2 minutes ago, this group of reporters with heavy photographic equipment were all drawn to a nondescript underground private cafe in the city center by an anonymous email. The email included a high-definition transaction screenshot and a command for an offline delivery of high-tech cheating devices at 9 o'clock tonight in the cafe's private room. The buyer was Ethan, and the seller was the local acting for an overseas cheating ring. I leaned against the car seat, calmly watching the real-time footage on my phone screen. Outside the cafe's private room, several investigative reporters and online hosts had quietly set up hidden cameras. Inside the room, Ethan wore a baseball cap and a mask, looking panicked as he pushed a black leather case filled with cash toward a scar-faced man opposite him. "All the money is here. A total of $300,000 in cash." Ethan's voice was extremely tense, even trembling slightly. "The wireless signal tomorrow must be absolutely stable. The girl at the banquet tonight almost ruined everything. I only have this path left now." The scar-faced man sneered, pulling a miniature transmitter from his radiation-proof box. "Relax. This is the latest dual-band frequency hopping device. The exam room's shielding can't block it. As long as you take it in, the outside team will ensure that the standard answers are transmitted into your headset within 30 minutes of the exam." Just as the scar-faced man handed the prohibited device to Ethan, the door to the private room was suddenly burst open by several reporters. The blinding flashes lit up the entire room, and the camera lenses were almost pressed against Ethan's face. "Mr. Ethan, may I ask if you are holding a nationally banned examination cheat device? Are the $300,000 in cash and the overseas team you mentioned true? As a top-tier academic qualification candidate, you openly purchased cheating answers before the exam. Is your mother, Mrs. Sarah, aware of this and providing financial support?" The reporters fired questions like bullets in the tight space of the private room. Ethan was terrified, his soul almost leaving his body. In a panic, he toppled to the floor, the prohibited device and the cash from the black case scattering everywhere, money flying through the air like snowflakes. The scar-faced man, seeing this, attempted to leap out the window to escape but was tackled by plainclothes police who had rushed in, cuffing him firmly on the spot. This scene was being live-streamed in full authenticity by several mainstream media outlets on the scene. The chat in the live stream room exploded in an instant. OMG! Caught on the spot? This is unbelievable. The stuff exposed at the congratulatory banquet just now actually turned out to be true. He really went to buy the answers. If someone like this gets qualified, it's unfair to the other examinees. It must be investigated thoroughly. Sarah's phone rang off the hook at this moment. I swiped to answer, and the voice on the other end was her near hysterical scream and cry, accompanied by the wailing police sirens in the background. Clara, is that you? You led the reporters there, didn't you? You killed your own brother. You monster. May you not have a good death. I listened to her roars quietly, with no tremor in my tone. Mrs. Sarah, Ethan is the one who did wrong. Ethan is the one who bought the banned goods. The police arrested him. The media photographed him. From start to finish, I never even saw his face. You bastard. Sarah screamed on the street, disregarding her image. I'm going to issue a statement to the media now. I'll say this is all you're framing him. I'll fight this to the end to make you pay. You can try, I replied calmly, but before that, you'd better take a look at the headlines on the internet. After hanging up, the news homepage had already updated the latest police bulletin announcement on a local examinee suspected of illegally purchasing cheating devices for exams. The criminal suspect Ethan and the overseas intermediary have been subjected to criminal compulsory measures in accordance with the law. The source of funds involved and related persons are under in-depth investigation. On the screen, a clear photo of Ethan being escorted to a police car by officers appeared, while in the background Sarah was kneeling by the roadside, covering her face and screaming in despair. I turned off the screen and spoke calmly to the driver. Take me to a hotel beside the exam venue. The car stopped right in front of the Grand Seasons Hotel facing the exam site. I took the pre-prepared admission ticket and ID documents, and walked into the lobby to check in. At this moment, there were less than 12 hours left until tomorrow's top academic qualification assessment exam. I entered the room, and the first thing I did was to completely power off my 2 mobile phones, remove the SIM cards, and lock them inside the room's safe. Then I walked to the door, hung up the anti-theft chain, re-locked the room, and tightly jammed the hotel's heavy electronic door blocker under the bottom of the door gap. This was the night I had long anticipated. Sarah could never watch with her eyes open as Ethan was arrested and allow me to attend the exam smoothly. Her only lifeline tonight was to stop me from stepping into tomorrow's exam at all costs, thereby creating a situation where neither side participated, and the slots must be deferred for review. At 1:30 a.m., urgent and harsh footsteps echoed in the corridor. Bam! 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 A massive door-smashing sound suddenly exploded on the room door, accompanied by Sarah's hysterical screams. Clara! Get out here! You've ruined me and you dare to sleep soundly? I sat on the edge of the bed, not even lifting an eyelid, allowing her to bang on the door panel frantically. Seeing there was no response inside, Sarah began to wildly dial my number. However, my phone had long since been completely powered off, with signal completely blocked. The frenzy of being unable to call completely devoured her rationality. Waiter! Open this door for me. My daughter suddenly had a heart attack inside. Quickly use the master key to open the door. Sarah screamed in the lobby and down the corridor, her voice torn to shreds. She'll die in there. If a life is lost, can your hotel take responsibility? The hotel lobby manager and 2 security guards were sweating profusely as they hurried upstairs with the master key. The lobby manager timidly swiped the door lock with the room key, and though the lock unlocked, the anti-theft chain and the heavy door blocker at the bottom still jammed the door tight, leaving only a 2-finger-wide crack. Sarah, through the door crack, saw me calmly seated on the sofa, and her expression immediately twisted from feigned panic to extreme grotesque grimness. Are you not sick? Are you pretending to be dead? Sarah frantically battered the door, her hands slipping along the crack trying to reach the anti-theft chain, her mouth emitting a bone-chilling howl. Break the door! She's crazy! She has a fake certificate. You can't let her participate in tomorrow's exam. The lobby manager finally reacted, his face looking extremely ugly. Madam, you just said a guest suddenly fell ill. But the guest is clearly very conscious now. This is illegal intrusion into someone's residence and serious harassment of a guest. What do you know? I'm her mother. Sarah madly dragged at the security guard's clothes, even opened her mouth and bit the guard's arm. Break the door. Drag her out. As long as it's past 9 tomorrow morning, I'll give you 1 million. The guard screamed in pain, unable to bear it any longer, immediately pulling out the intercom to report. Security! There is violent disturbance upstairs. Intentional assault. Call the police immediately. In less than 5 minutes, police sirens blared loudly downstairs of the hotel. 2 detectives and several duty officers rushed upstairs and immediately saw Sarah in the corridor, crazily smashing the door with a fire hydrant extinguisher, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, evening gown torn to shreds, looking like a patient with mania escaped from a lunatic asylum. Stop! Police! Put things down! The officers ordered sternly. Sarah wouldn't listen at all, instead waving the extinguisher at the officers and smashing towards them, muttering nonsense and screaming. No one can stop my son. Clara, you whore! I'll kill you. I'll share the fate with you. 2 police officers moved swiftly, one delivering a standard big-bellied anti-riot block, instantly pushing Sarah heavily to the floor. Click! The cold handcuffs snapped shut around Sarah's wrists. Let me go! I'm the victim. I have to go to the exam room. I need to report to the examination committee. Sarah, lying on the floor, struggled frenziedly, her facial muscles twitching. Foam at the mouth, and snot and tears smeared all over the floor. I calmly opened the security chain inside the door, opened the room door, stepped in front of the police, and handed them the hotel's surveillance retrieval authorization and a copy of the anti-harassment protective order I had just signed last night. Officer, my voice was clear, my demeanor composed. This woman broke in at midnight with a weapon, forged a report, committed violent harm, and seriously threatened my life and safety. I will legally pursue all criminal liabilities and will not accept any form of settlement. The leading officer looked towards Sarah, who was unconscious, rolling on the floor and roaring, and sighed, then seriously said to me, Rest assured, this examinee, we will immediately take her back to the police station for criminal detention. Please be at ease and prepare for tomorrow's exam. Sarah was forcibly dragged toward the elevator by 2 officers. She let out a sharp, piercing scream of despair all the way, her feet dragging 2 deep gouges on the carpet in the corridor, and she completely lost her mind, becoming the laughingstock of the entire hotel. The corridor fell back into a deathly silence. I glanced at the wall clock. 3 a.m. I locked the door again, turned off the lights, and lay back on the bed with my eyes closed. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I left the hotel on time, crossed the street, and walked calmly into the examination hall gates. Verification of identity documents, facial recognition, security check, everything went smoothly. My name appeared clearly on the large screen at the entrance. Status: exam eligibility approved. Seat number 01. The examination hall was utterly silent. All examinees were focused and waiting. Outside the hall, however, the outside world was already in chaos. At 8:45 a.m., Sarah had completed the initial interrogation at the police station. Because she was suspected of intentional harm and disturbing public order, the police initially planned administrative detention, but she, feigning a heart attack, forcefully requested release on bail. In the first second after being freed, she didn't even bother to rub the purple bruise-forming wrists from the handcuffs, rented a taxi, and rushed toward the exam hall like crazy. 5 minutes remained until the official start of the exam, at 8:55. Ignoring the security personnel's obstruction, Sarah forcibly broke through the barrier outside the exam hall's doors, holding a red-letter report letter, and at the doorway yelled hysterically, "Report! I want to file a real-name report. The candidate at seat 01 has questionable credentials. She took a fraudulent mental health certificate, and she brought cheating tools into the hall. You must not let her take the exam. Remove her immediately." Her scream attracted dozens of media reporters stationed outside the hall, with cameras instantly turning to her terrifyingly distorted, bloodshot face. The chief supervisor of the exam and the head of the educational disciplinary inspection team grimaced, and, accompanied by several security personnel, quickly moved forward. "Ma'am, please stay calm," the supervisor said in a low, stern tone. "This is a restricted area of the examination. Loud noises are prohibited. If you have evidence, please submit it according to procedure. Otherwise, we will arrest you for disrupting national-level exam order." "I have evidence. I have absolute evidence." Sarah crazily pulled out a stack of printed papers from her bag and slammed them, hard, onto the supervisor's chest. "This is what I saw with my own eyes. It records the underlying receiver codes of cheating earphones and exclusive serial numbers of prohibited devices. This code, once turned on, will cause the anti-interference system in the exam hall to fail. You can go inside and check now. Right at seat 01. The supervisor frowned, took the stack of evidence papers, and carefully checked the equipment numbers and receiver codes printed on them. Then the disciplinary inspection team leader produced a portable exam hall signal monitor and entered the forbidden serial numbers from Sarah's report letter into it on the spot. Beep, beep, beep. The alarm instantly emitted a sharp, piercing red light. When Sarah saw the red light, she laughed wildly with tears and snot streaming down her face. "See? I was right. The red light is on. The cheating device is inside. Quickly fetch Clara. Cancel her score. Hurry." However, the head of the disciplinary inspection team looked at the location data that appeared on the terminal screen, and the expression on his face shifted from stern to extraordinarily strange, then hardened into cold anger. The signal source location indicated that the prohibited device was not at the exam hall's seat 01, Clara, but at seat 23, which is the emergency backup seat in the back row. And seated at seat 23 was Ethan, who had earlier obtained a temporary bail proof from the police and, at the last minute, forcibly squeezed into the exam hall on a rule-bending attempt to win at all costs. It turned out that yesterday, when Sarah secretly hid the prohibited device on Ethan, she missed a step in the rush and copied the serial number of the device, which she believed was already given to Clara, into the report letter's content. The cheating code she reported had always been worn inside Ethan's shirt lining. "Block off exam hall seat 23. The supervisor ordered decisively. "Notify the Criminal Investigation Brigade to verify the equipment on site." 2 armed police at the scene and disciplinary inspectors burst in through the door, heading straight for table 23. Ethan, wearing an invisible headset and trembling, sat at his seat waiting for an external signal. He suddenly saw the SWAT team approach him, and he, so scared he wet his pants, collapsed beneath the desk, letting out a desperate scream. The officers immediately found in the inner pocket of his clothing a micro-bone conduction device and a frequency-hopping receiver identical to those in Sarah's tip-off letter. "Conclusive evidence," the head of the disciplinary inspection group, in front of the whole auditorium of media and examinees, grabbed the loudspeaker and proclaimed, "Examinee Ethan, openly bringing into the examination room high-tech cheating devices strictly prohibited by national decree. The severity of the crime is extreme. According to the amendment to the Criminal Law, 9, his lifelong examination qualifications are revoked, and he will be handed over to the judicial authorities for criminal liability in accordance with the law." Ethan was dragged out of the examination room by 2 special police officers as if dragging a dead dog. When Ethan was dragged past the gate, Sarah lay on the ground with her mouth wide open in a stupefied scream. She looked at the letter she had written herself, and at her son, handcuffed and crying his heart out, his eyes nearly bulging from their sockets. No, how could it be Ethan? Sarah emitted a scream that was almost inhuman, convulsing violently, and banging her head against a nearby concrete pillar. "I caused my son to suffer. I reported Ethan." Inside the exam hall, the bell rang loudly, and the exam officially began. I sat at seat 01, calmly opening the test paper, gripping the pen in my hand as the tip scratched on the answer sheet. The bell signaling the end of the last exam rang. I closed my pen cover and calmly walked out of the examination hall with the crowd. Outside the hall, the sunlight was blinding, but the ones waiting for Sarah and Ethan were not warm rays of sun, but law enforcement officers and family members who had been waiting for a long time. The old patriarch stood at the front with a cane, his face as stern as iron. Beside him stood several financial investigators from the police and the entire family council. "Sarah, in tatters, with disheveled hair and hollow eyes, sat in a wheelchair, mumbling Ethan didn't cheat continuously. Ethan, on the other hand, was in handcuffs, gray-faced, being escorted beside a police car. Seeing me come out of the exam room, a burst of frenzy surged within Sarah from somewhere, and she suddenly toppled from the wheelchair, crawled to my feet, and reached out to grab the hem of my pants. "Clara, please, go tell the police it's a misunderstanding. Save Ethan. As long as you save him, I'll do anything you ask." I stepped back, looking down at her with a condescending, icy gaze as cold as a lake frozen 3 feet thick. From the file bag I carried, I drew out a stack of legal documents stamped with red seals, and in front of the old patriarch, the investigators, and all relatives, I displayed them one by one. "Mrs. Sarah, I'm afraid the thing you should worry about most now isn't Ethan's bail, but your own criminal liability." I opened the first document, my voice clear and resounding, echoing across the square. "This is Chapter 1, showing your private funds transfer of $500,000 with Dr. Vance's private clinic, and your personally signed asset mortgage undertaking. You illegally mortgaged 3 real estate properties under the family fund to obtain $3 million in illegal loans." Sarah's pupils widened in an instant. Her lips trembled violently. You're lying." I paid no attention to her and proceeded to the second document. "This is Chapter 2, witnessed on the spot by attorney Mr. Harrison, the voluntary waiver and asset transfer agreement affixed with the family seal. According to the agreement, all shares, vehicles, and real estate profits under Ethan's name have been formally transferred to me in full as of the day before yesterday." Finally, I produced the police's investigative notice. "You embezzled $60,000 of company funds to purchase overseas high-tech tools for Ethan, and you are suspected of forging company financial seals. The investigative department has filed a case against you just half an hour ago." The old patriarch trembled with anger at these words, slamming the cane hard onto the concrete with a loud thud. "Wicked one! A complete disgrace to the family." The old man pointed a finger at Sarah's nose and berated her. "Come, summon a family meeting immediately to completely cut Sarah and Ethan out of the family tree. Revoke all family benefits." The police stepped forward, producing cold handcuffs and directly clamping them on Sarah's wrists. "Ms. Sarah, you are suspected of embezzlement, forging official documents, and illegal pledging of another's assets. Please come with us." Sarah stared vacantly at the handcuffs on her wrists, then looked at the stack of legal documents in my hand that had stripped her and Ethan of all their assets. She finally realized that every step from the very beginning had been within my precise calculation. "Ah!" Sarah let out a despairing and ridiculous howl to the sky, sprayed a mouthful of blood on the ground, and fainted, carried away on the ambulance by the officers like mud. I gathered the documents, gave the old man a slight nod, and then turned to walk toward the waiting taxi on the street. After a brief treatment and waking up, Sarah was directly handcuffed and escorted by the police to a detention center for detention prior to trial. Yet, while confined in the detention facility, Sarah did not abandon her final desperate struggle. In her view, as long as she could come up with a huge bail, hire the city's top criminal defense team, she could downgrade Ethan's charge from illegal purchase of cheating devices to attempted cheating, thereby securing a suspended sentence. At the same time, if she could raise funds to plug the holes in the company's public funds, she could avoid prison herself. To raise this sky-high bail and litigation fees, Sarah issued an urgent power of attorney through her lawyer in the detention center, directing her most trusted private intermediary to immediately liquidate a luxury duplex in a core downtown location and 2 commercial shops at a fire sale price. The next morning, the intermediary, with a buyer in tow, rushed to the real estate registration and transfer center to process the transfer. However, as the staff at the Housing Bureau entered the property title into the system, a bright red warning message suddenly popped up on the computer screen. "Warning. This property has been legally subject to judicial freezing by the court, and transfers, mortgages, assignments, and changes of register are prohibited." The intermediary and the buyer were dumbfounded on the spot. The intermediary pounded the counter glass, shouting in a piercing voice, "How could it be frozen? This is Lady Sarah's privately owned property. It was fine yesterday." The staff produced a copy of the court's ruling in a cold tone. This property has been preliminarily preserved by order of the creditor Clara, according to the asset donor and supplemental agreement, previously signed and judicially notarized. The ownership claim for this property has undergone a legal change and is now in a major litigation state, fully frozen. Meanwhile, the doors of the City Tax Bureau's inspection team and the Commercial Bank's Credit Risk Management Department opened to receive my legal team. I sat in the reception room of the law firm, calmly watching several stamped complaint materials on the desk. The first material is a complete ledger copy of Sarah's past 5 years of using peripheral family companies for fake transactions, evading personal income tax and enterprise income tax. For every bit of funds movement and the hidden locations of the dual ledgers, I had them marked clearly. The second material is Sarah's forged asset proof and fake property mortgage documents submitted to banks to obtain high credit limits for Ethan. After half an hour, the City Tax Bureau's inspection team officially filed a case and issued a tax risk freeze notice to major financial institutions. In the detention center, waiting anxiously for the intermediary to bring money to save her, Sarah suddenly received devastating news from her lawyer, Madam Sarah. Something big has happened. The lawyer, sweating profusely and his voice trembling almost to breaking, said, "The luxury house and shops under your name cannot be sold at all. Clara had applied for property preservation with the court 3 days ago based on that supplemental agreement, and all of your real estate is frozen by the court." Sarah was struck as if by lightning, slamming herself into the glass barrier, her eyes nearly bulging out. "What did you say? Frozen? What about the bank accounts? I still have several million in cash in my card." The lawyer sighed in despair. 5 minutes ago, the tax bureau and the banks issued a freezing order. Because of suspected large-scale tax evasion and fake loan scams, all of your bank cards, trust accounts, securities accounts, and any transactions under your name have been legally seized. The current balance shows zero. Zero? Sarah let out a sound that was not human, frantically banging against the barrier, handcuffs clanging against the iron bars. "Where is my money? Where is my house? That bitch Clara. She's driving me to death." Not only that, the lawyer swallowed, handing over another notice. "The bank has formally reported you to the police for submitting false proof to obtain a loan, pursuing criminal charges of financial fraud. Now, no one can save Ethan. Not even you. You are completely unable to escape." After hearing this, Sarah felt as if her backbone had been drained, collapsing and sliding to the floor in a limp heap. Her bank card was frozen, her assets in her name reduced to zero, and she could not even pay a single cent of legal fees anymore. Once so high and mighty, who toyed with others with money and power, Sarah had, in just 48 hours, completely become a penniless, reputation ruined, multi-crime convict facing multiple penalties. The courtroom was solemn, the court emblem hung high. Today is the day when Ethan's case for illegal purchase of exam cheating devices and major exam fraud goes to open court for public trial. In the defendant's seat, Ethan wore a yellow jail vest, handcuffs and ankle shackles producing dull clanks. In just a few weeks, he had withered considerably, his eyes deeply sunken, his hair sparse and disheveled, and his gaze filled with fear and despair of prison life. In the front row of the spectator seating, Sarah sat in prison garb, escorted by 2 bailiffs. Her face was pallid as paper, her eyes bloodshot, staring hard at the bench. Because all of her under his name assets were legally frozen, she could not afford the exorbitant fees of a top defense team and could only have a court-appointed defense attorney represent Ethan in court. During the court investigation phase, the court-appointed attorney tried a final attempt, rising to defend. "Your Honor, my client Ethan was young at the time and lacked social experience. He was completely duped and misled by a third-party overseas intermediary. He did not have malicious intent to disrupt national-level exam order. He was even unaware of the specific capabilities of the prohibited devices. I request the court to consider that he was duped, and grant a light or mitigated punishment." Hearing this defense, a faint glimmer suddenly appeared in Sarah's eyes. She leaned forward eagerly and shouted, "Yes, Your Honor. My son was duped. It was that intermediary that harmed him. He's a good boy." "Quiet!" The presiding judge rapped the gavel, voice stern. "Spectators are strictly prohibited from disrupting the court." I sat calmly at the witness stand, submitting a request to the court and signaling my assistant to hand over an encrypted storage disk. Your Honor. I rose, my voice crisp and firm, without any emotional color. Regarding the unaware and duped claims made by the defendant Ethan and his guardian Sarah, I have crucial evidence to present to the court. The judge nodded in approval. The court's large screen immediately played a high-definition, complete video and audio recorded by gossip media at the scene. On the screen, Ethan deftly counts $30,000 in cash and speaks to the scar-faced man. Tomorrow's signal must be absolutely stable. The bitch at the banquet tonight almost blew this up. I have only this path now. Moreover, the video then switches to a bank transfer receipt signed by Sarah and a funds authorization letter. Every penny's flow, from Sarah's account withdrawal, through underground remittance channels, and precisely into overseas cheating gang accounts, follows an incredibly clear and tamper-proof chain. Faced with the facts, any rationalization seemed pale and ridiculous. The defendant Ethan, knowing full well that this was a national-level top academic assessment, acted with extreme subjective malice. He not only proactively contacted overseas criminal gangs, but also paid a large sum to purchase military-grade prohibited items. The facts are clear and the evidence conclusive. I stated the facts coldly, and his guardian Sarah is the direct provider and signatory of these criminal funds. The defense attorney on the court floor looked at the ironclad data and videos on the big screen, helplessly shook his head, and completely abandoned any defense of innocence or minimal punishment, lowering his head and returning to his seat. Sitting in the defendant's chair, Ethan completely collapsed. He turned his head, his eyes full of resentment and despair, staring at Sarah, and with a torn voice cried out hysterically, "Mom, didn't you say it would be foolproof? Didn't you say this money could buy everything? You ruined me. You pushed me into this. I hate you. I hate you to death." Sarah watched her son's crazed abuse and accusations, and she seemed struck by lightning. The pride she cherished most and would spare no vile means to support, at this moment cast all blame and resentment onto her head. "No, Ethan. Mom did this for you." Sarah opened her mouth, tears and snot running together, her chest heaving violently, then a fit of convulsions, and she collapsed in the arms of the marshal. The presiding judge struck the gavel once more and read the verdict aloud. The court finds the defendant Ethan's conduct constitutes illegal organization, exam cheating, illegal use of eavesdropping and covert recording devices, multiple offenses for punishment, and sentences him to 5 years in prison, a fine of 500,000 yuan, and the deprivation of lifelong qualification for top-tier academic assessment. The cold verdict echoed through the courtroom. Ethan was escorted out of the court by the marshal, letting out eerie screams and curses at Sarah along the way, his voice gradually fading behind the iron doors. And Sarah, like a soulless husk, slumped in the spectator seats, eyes unfocused, having completely lost all retreat and hope. After the court's ruling takes effect, Ethan's drama has ended, but Sarah's ultimate settlement has only just begun. Although Sarah is under bail awaiting final criminal charges for multiple offenses, she still clings stubbornly to her last bit of obsession, the old family house, the ancestral home in the city center's prime location, which holds all her aristocratic dreams. To Sarah, as long as she occupies this house, as long as she hasn't moved out, she is still the mistress of this family, and she hasn't lost everything yet. At 9 in the morning, sunlight pierces the gloom. The old house's front door remains shut. Sarah locks herself in the living room, boarding up every door and window from the inside. She sits curled on the sofa, her head unkempt, clutching tightly a photocopy of the admission notice to the top-tier mansion that once belonged to me, and a box of matches. Her eyes are wild and twisted, her whole body exuding a rancid aura of dying struggle. "This is my house. No one can take it." Sarah roars at the air, facial muscles twitching violently. "That bitch Clara. She won't get the admission notice. She won't be able to trample on me completely." Bang! 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 A heavy, solemn knocking breaks the house's deathly quiet. "Ms. Sarah, we are staff from the City Intermediate People's Court Enforcement Bureau." A cold, authoritative voice comes from outside the door. According to the court's effective judgment and proof of transfer of real estate ownership, the property rights fully belong to Ms. Clara. Please open the door immediately and cooperate in clearing the premises. Hearing this, Sarah's whole body screams as if her tail has been stepped on. I won't open. You're all bought by Clara. This is my house. I've lived here for 20 years. I'll show you who dares to come in. Whoever comes in, I'll set this building on fire and barricade it with you. She frantically lights a match, bringing the flame toward the photocopy of the admission notice, attempting to threaten the enforcement officers with arson. But she has no idea that what awaits outside is not compromise or retreat. Enforcement plan initiated. Notify unlock personnel and the engineering team. Forcible entry. The judge does not hesitate at all and directly issues the order for forced demolition. Boom! With a thunderous roar, several professional demolition workers, equipped with heavy cutting tools and hydraulic shears, break open the thick security door and reinforced wooden boards in just 3 minutes. A huge cloud of dust rises as court enforcement personnel, several guards, and my high-paid professional moving team stream in one after another, filling the narrow living room in an instant. I am wearing a sharp black trench coat, high-heeled shoes, entering the hall slowly through the opening in the crowd. The cadence of my heels on the floor, tap, 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 resonates like a hammer striking Sarah's fragile nerves. Sarah glances at the intruding crowd in terror. The match in her hand has fallen to the floor and extinguished. She frantically swings a metal baton, screaming to charge forward. Get out! You robbers! Get out of my home! 2 tall enforcement guards don't blink. They step forward with clean, decisive movements, one precise side arm lock, instantly disarming Sarah's baton, then reverse apply double arm bars and press her to the sofa, immobilizing her. Ms. Sarah, please restrain yourself. The enforcer judge stepped forward, coldly producing the judgment for forced execution and the house ownership ruling and loudly proclaiming in her presence. According to the effective agreement you personally signed and sealed in Chapter 2, and the property preservation ruling issued by the court in Chapter 8, the ownership of this house has officially been transferred to Ms. Clara 5 days ago. You are currently illegally seizing someone else's private property, and our court is now lawfully ordering your forcible eviction. The judge turned around and waved to the moving team behind him. Begin the eviction. Pack all of Ms. Sarah's personal clothing and daily necessities and transport them to the designated temporary relief shelter. The rest belonging to the property's fixtures and furniture shall be kept in place. Understood. More than 20 uniformed movers immediately sprang into action, sweeping through like a whirlwind. They carried specially designed giant organizing bags and seals, and began to thoroughly clean and remove from the living room, master bedroom, and study. Sarah watched as her most treasured luxury bags, high-end jewelry, and custom gowns were swept into black organizing bags by the workers like garbage. She watched the redwood furniture she once used to flaunt her aristocratic status be sealed with eviction notices. She watched, in just 30 minutes, the territory she had managed for half her life, used to suppress me, be thoroughly looted. Don't touch my things. Those are mine. They're all mine. Sarah cried out on the floor, her tears and mucus mingling with the dust on the ground, her face dirted as if she were a beggar. I walked up to her, crouched down, and looked directly into her eyes, filled with despair and resentment. I pulled from my pocket the pristine original of the top-tier mansion admission letter bearing the golden seal of the highest academic institution, and I swayed it gently before her. You've seen clearly. My voice was very soft, yet carried an irresistible authority. What you burned last night was only a scrap copy I deliberately left in the living room. The real notice has long since been delivered to me by the National Postal Service. Sarah's pupils shrank sharply, her lips parted widely, but she could not utter a sound. I stood up and, from a superior vantage, looked down at the woman who once trampled on me and tried to ruin my life, and issued the final command coldly: clear out her personal trash, and, with her as a person, throw her out the front door. The guards dragged the sobbing Sarah out of the old mansion as if hauling a garbage bag, and dumped her heavily onto the road outside the gate. Bam! The old mansion's new door lock slammed shut behind them. Sarah sat on the cold granite pavement, surrounded by onlookers pointing and whispering, with several black garbage bags piled up beside her. She had lost the house, lost the property, lost her son, and completely lost any control over this family. Morning sunlight poured through the tall French floor-to-ceiling windows, spilling over the spacious, tidy hall of the old residence. The air no longer carried the mustiness and decay of the past, only the fresh clarity of a new life beginning. I stood in the center of the hall and straightened my formal attire. Outside, the official welcome fleet of Top Manor had already parked punctually in the courtyard, the glossy black cars gleaming in the sun. Just then, several police escort cars roared up and stopped at the old house's gate. 2 bailiffs stepped out and handed me the delivery receipts. Today was the day Sarah was officially being taken to the women's prison to serve time, charged with multiple criminal offenses including embezzlement, forgery of official documents, illegal mortgaging, and financial fraud. According to legal procedures, before her formal prosecution upon entering prison, a final handover of property and signing of documents between me, the sole legally related person, and the victim was required. The back door of the police car opened, and under the escort of 2 criminal officers, Sarah slowly stepped out. There was none of the former fine-bred mistress in her now. She wore a gray detention center uniform, her hair white and sparse, her eyes dry and lifeless, facial muscles slack with stiffness. The iron shackles on her wrists and ankles clinked with a chilling, sharp sound as she moved. Seeing me standing resplendent at the old house's entrance, surrounded by Top Manor's reception staff and media reporters, the last trace of resentment and malice flared in Sarah's eyes. A strange clucking sound escaped her throat as she tried to struggle forward, but the officers held her down tightly. I did not flinch. I walked straight to her and stopped only a single step away. I took 2 thick documents from my briefcase and, in front of all the judicial personnel and media cameras, smoothed them out and handed them to Sarah. The first was a photocopy of an admission letter from the city's top university certifying highest academic qualification, my name Clara boldly printed on it, and the top citywide ranking. The second was the full set of property transfer forms and the final judgment on share transfer issued jointly by the Judicial Enforcement Bureau and the Real Estate Registration Center. Every listed asset, every trust fund, even the ownership of this old residence worth tens of millions, had all been lawfully renamed and registered solely under Clara, severing any connection to Sarah and Ethan. Ms. Sarah, my voice flowed calm and untroubled like a river, each word cutting like a blade. Look carefully. Sarah's posture froze as she lowered her head to stare at the cold, merciless legal clauses and the glaring victor's signature Clara. Her pupils constricted violently, red veins crawled across her eyes, and her whole body began to tremble uncontrollably. The spot you've been desperately scheming to secure for your son ultimately belongs to me. I pointed at the first document and spoke each word deliberately. All the assets you connived to seize now belong to me as well. Sarah gaped, attempting to scream, to curse, but overwhelming despair and annihilation clamped her throat like a giant hand, leaving her unable to utter a single syllable. She watched helplessly as the daughter she had schemed and tormented for a lifetime rose to an absolute, crushing pinnacle of power and honor, while she and her son were reduced to prisoners who would never recover. Take her away, the officer ordered sternly. The bailiffs escorted Sarah back to the police car. The moment the door closed, Sarah finally broke down. Inside the compartment she let out an inhuman wail, furiously banging her head against the car window, only able to watch the old house and my receding figure disappear into the distance until they vanished from sight. I turned my gaze away, wheeled around, securely stowed the original admission letter, and calmly stepped onto the back seat of the orientation bus. Outside the window, the sunlight was just right, the avenue wide and straight. I closed the car door, completely bidding farewell to the past, and drove forward toward the pinnacle future that belonged to me. In the side room of the prison cafeteria, a sharp, acrid smell of disinfectant mixed with cheap food hung in the air. The LCD TV mounted above the wall was playing the noon news. Inmates in gray prison uniforms clustered together, chewing the vegetable leaves numbly, occasionally glancing up. Sarah and Ethan crouched in the farthest corner. 2 years of prison life had completely erased the last shred of humanity in them. Ethan bore a fierce scar on his face from repeatedly getting into fights in prison, his back hunched like a 60-year-old, his eyes numb yet cruel. Sarah's hair had long since turned white, her eyes dull and lifeless. Because of long hours of hard labor, her hands, joints were thick and deformed, and she looked as withered as a wind-dried stick. Suddenly, the background music on the TV grew high-pitched and solemn. The news anchor's crisp, pleasant voice spread throughout the cafeteria. Now we bring the latest live news just received by our station. This morning, the Grand Academic Hall held this year's most anticipated ceremony for Lifetime Achievement and Supreme Academic Leader. The youngest ever top scholar, the head of a premier research fund, Miss Clara, formally ascended the stage to accept the highest honor. The name Clara exploded like thunder in the cramped, enclosed cafeteria. Sarah's hand holding the iron spoon trembled violently, and a half-spoonful of pig slop-like soup splashed onto her thigh. The scalding liquid scalded her, causing a convulsion, yet she seemed unaware, suddenly lifting her head, gripping the iron bars in front of her with all her strength. Her eyes stretched wide to almost burst. Beside her, Ethan was struck by an electric shock. The steamed bun in his hand dropped onto the filthy floor and rolled toward the trash can. On the TV screen, the lens slowly moved in closer. In the golden and red magnificence of the hall, countless spotlights and flashes interplayed. The stage was filled with global political and business elites, academic heavies, and family elders. At the very center of the hall, Clara stood in a black haute couture gown whose cut exuded texture, her long hair elegantly piled at the back of her head, a golden medal on her chest symbolizing the supreme honor. Her demeanor was composed and confident. Her eyes were clear and icy, radiating an aura of formidable power and absolute authority that nobody dared to look at directly. The old master sat in the front row of the VIP seats, eyes filled with pride and joy, clapping vigorously. Relatives who had once relied on Sarah crowded the edge of the camera, gazing up at Clara on stage with extreme flattery and reverence. When the presenter handed Clara the staff and certificate of the Supreme Leader, the entire venue erupted with thunderous applause and cheers. "Oh my God! This is incredible! So young and already controlling the entire family fund and top academic resources. I heard she was the top scholar with full marks back then. Such a genius is practically a god. Ordinary people aren't even worthy to loosen her shoes." The prisoner's discussions and praises around him pierced through Sarah and Ethan's ears like needles. Clara took the microphone, facing the global live broadcast, and spoke with a calm, clear voice. "To have achieved what I have today, I must thank all the obstacles and betrayals of the past. It was those who tried to destroy me that taught me how to strip them of everything and climb to the highest peak." The applause from the audience roared again. In front of the TV, Ethan looked at the radiant, exalted Clara on the screen, then lowered his gaze to his own dirty prison uniform, the wounded side of his face, and the steamed bun smeared with dust lying next to the trash can. The 2 years of accumulated resentment, jealousy, and despair flooded his mind, completely swallowing his sanity in that moment. "I don't want to watch. Close it now. Please, just turn it off." Ethan sprang up like a crazed dog, claws frantically raking his own hair, emitting a piercing, shrill howl. He lunged at the TV, intent on smashing it, but 2 approaching guards tackled him with a fierce tiger pounce, pinning him to the floor as cold handcuffs clenched again around his wrists. And Sarah, frozen in place, remained seated. She looked at the screen at the daughter she had once trampled and tried to erase with counterfeit proofs and tranquilizers. Now standing at the very top of human society, possessing the wealth, status, and dignity she could never even dream of in this life. And she herself, having personally shipped her son's future away, personally shredded the family's glory, having gambled away all hope and stakes, reduced to the most humble, rotting flesh in a prison cell. Snap! A drop of murky tear slid from Sarah's emaciated eye corner, falling into that bowl of foul-smelling soup. Extreme remorse and despair gnawed at her heart like a deadly venomous snake, making her whole body convulse violently, as she emitted a series of hoarse, choked sobs and wails. On the television, Clara gracefully turned and walked off the stage under the gaze of 1,000 eyes, toward the radiant, brilliant future that belongs to her. Outside the TV, the cold iron door slammed shut with a dull clang, permanently sealing these 2 utterly ruined people in a dark hell from which there would be no return.